Now, you've heard her in the courtroom. You've seen her on television and on news on some of the most high-profile cases in California and across the country. The trailblazing Erika Contreras.
I don't think it was a compliment, but when I was a kid, you argue too much, you talk too much, you should be a lawyer. And I didn't know any lawyers, right? So what do I know? But I thought like, yeah, that sounds like something I want to be. My mom used to work for an attorney. He would get up in the morning, wear his suits and go away. And I thought, this is, I can do that. You know, that seems kind of cool. I think that's the wonderful thing about this country is anything is really possible. Where you grew up does not dictate where you will end up. One of the things that I inherited from my parents is that I'm a really hard worker. I can outwork anybody. Sometimes you just kind of have to figure out what works for you. What is your superpower? And once you figure that out, it really does kind of give you purpose, kind of reassures that faith that you have in yourself.
So today, we are so honored to be graced with the presence of one of the premier catastrophic injury attorneys in California, a partner at one of the premier catastrophic injury firms in California, the trailblazing Erika Contreras. Now, you've heard her in the courtroom. You've seen her on television and on news on some of the most high-profile cases in California and across the country. She's been recognized by the Los Angeles Business Journal as the 2024 Leader of Influence. She is a past recipient of the 2023 California Lawyer Attorney of the Year Award from the Daily Journal, a 2023 Attorney of the Year finalist for the Consumer Attorneys of California, a recipient of the 2022 Trailblazer Award from the Latina Lawyers Bar Association. She's been named among the top women attorneys in Southern California by Los Angeles Magazine, and she's been listed as a Southern California super lawyer and among the best lawyers in California since 2020. And, as if that were not enough, she is an on-demand speaker at just about every legal conference and seminar that exists in our industry. Today, on Art of Purpose, this powerhouse of an attorney, Erika Contreras, sits down to share with us her journey to the mountaintop, including that of being a proud daughter of hardworking immigrants, a student who worked throughout her entire time at law school, and a hardworking mother who has not been limited by anything in life, but rather has channeled her surroundings into the most rewarding and impactful of careers. Erika, welcome to Art of Purpose, and thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the invitation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, you know, you and I met a couple of years ago now, and it's been so wonderful to know you and also to see, you know, your continued rise. Now, we're going to talk about this, but just a partner at Panish, Shea, Ravipudi. I mean, that's amazing. And I think it's, you know, as an attorney in the same space, you know, you think about going to a firm and being able to rise through the ranks and be a partner at one of like these amazing firms, and you've done it along with everything else that you have in your life. So really excited to talk to you, and I know you have an inspiring story to tell for our listeners.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think when you think of where I am now, you don't really see the story that kind of led me to where I am. Everything you said is true, but there's all this very humble beginnings.
Yeah, no, well, thank you for saying that. And let's start there. And I love this component of the podcast where we talk about that background, because you're right. Everybody sees sort of this finished product. I know we're not finished yet, right? But this sort of like product where we're at right now. But that doesn't really explain where we come from, what we experienced growing up, challenges and different situations even, right? And so that's the story we want to tell, because that's how we want to inspire folks. Yeah,
I think like you, like many other attorneys, I'm first generation. Born and raised in Los Angeles. I grew up in Pico Union, which is a low-income neighborhood next to Staples Center back then. I was there. My parents came from Guadalajara, and my dad came from Colima. Wow. They met here, married here, had 4 children. Up to the time that I was 13, we lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, 6 people in a 1-bedroom apartment. Okay. And, very, very humble beginnings.
Yeah. So you're a family of 6 then, growing up. We're a family of 6 as well, growing up. Where were you in that pecking order?
So I'm second to the oldest.
Second to oldest. Okay.
I have an older sister than me, a younger sister, and then a younger brother.
Oh, okay. So the baby boy came in right at the end, right?
My dad was very happy.
So yeah, tell us about that. Then growing up, we also did the one bedroom apartment growing up.
Yeah.
For me, it was up until fifth grade with my siblings, so I experienced that as well. How was that sort of growing up? And when you look back on that now, how it shaped a little bit of who you are.
Well, I mean, I think, when you're growing up, you don't know any different. Pico Union was all immigrant families. We were all first generation. It was not uncommon for all of us to translate for our parents. So a lot of the things that I did, we were all doing. So it just seemed very natural and normal to me.
Part of life.
Yes, just a normal part of life. As you're kind of growing up, when we lived together, everybody was kind of crammed into their apartment. So it wasn't an unusual state to be in.
Yeah.
My parents worked so hard. My dad had 2 jobs. Most of my life, my mom worked 7 days a week. We just,
Wow.
I don't think people understand that in this country, you can work nonstop and still have trouble supporting a family. And so that's, essentially they worked all the time. My mother, even though she worked all the time, she was very, very involved in our lives. She knew what we were doing at all times. And I don't know if your parents did the same thing, but she had eyes and ears everywhere.
You're like, how do you know?
Yeah. When I was 13, my parents were scrounged up enough money to buy a home. So we moved to South Los Angeles. And we bought a 3-bedroom home. And I was allowed to finish off my last year of junior high. I went to Berendo Junior High in Koreatown.
Okay.
And once I finished that year, my parents had me bussed out to high school. So I went to high school at Taft in Woodland Hills.
Oh, wow. How was that? How was that journey? Like something you had to do every single day, right? And something that you didn't. I mean, many people sometimes don't have to deal with that. It might be a school around the corner.
Right. No, the bus would pick us up at 6:30 in the morning and drive us all the way up to Woodland Hills. And I remember, I thought my first year of high school was really the first year where I was like, wait a minute. So not everybody's first generation, because in elementary school and junior high, we were all the same
Together.
and we were all together, and there wasn't really this issue of classism because we were all in the same class. When I was little, my mom would take me to work with her. She would take me and my older sister to work with her, and we would go into these rich neighborhoods. She was a housekeeper, and we'd go into these rich neighborhoods, and we would help her clean the houses. It never really dawned on me that those people were different, So to me, our state was normal. That's what everybody was. I never really associated with being low income because those people, they were not
it's
like
a different
me.
world, right? Something that happened somewhere else, and but then your world was here.
Right. Yeah. And we would go to work with my mom all the time during the summers. If she thought that we were not doing well in school, she would pull us from school and take us to work with her. Yeah, it was the scared straight.
Yeah.
My mom didn't drive; we had to take the bus. So if we went to work with her, she would wake us up at 5 a.m. Give us a light breakfast. We would walk to the bus stop. It's still dark outside. We would ride the bus for an hour and a half, clean until 3:30, and then come back on the bus. We would be exhausted. Mom, please, whatever you want. I swear, I'll do better.
I'll study.
And that was her kind of way of scaring us straight. And so when I went to high school, in my neighborhood, I was the same as everybody else. I was smart. I was in the gifted program. I knew I was smart. I went to high school for the first time in my life. I was like, oh, crap, I'm poor. Like, it hit me for the first time that I was poor. Taft was a very well-to-do high school. The kids, they went to the summer in Europe. They came back with new noses. So it was a whole different world for me to come. No, it's true. It was just very kind of interesting to me. And I think that was the first realization where I was like, wait a minute, I'm not that smart. That's how I took it. At the time, I go into freshman year. I enroll in honors English because I think I'm a genius at the time. I sit in a classroom with all these kids. They are better prepared than I am. And at that first year, I didn't realize it was a preparation issue.
Yeah.
I thought it was an intelligence issue. And so that first year was a lot of really accommodating, trying to figure out, like, first getting over the mental hurdle of I'm not that smart, Second, trying to figure out how do I catch up with these people? Because, I mean, freshmen had already read like the Canterbury Tales, Huckleberry Finn. I remember having these conversations during the first week of school. No idea what the teacher was talking about. I just didn't understand. And so that was the first thing. I was like, oh, what am I going to do?
Right.
I'm in this new school. I'm poor. I didn't know. And I'm not smart.
Yeah, you
and
don't feel
so
that way anymore. Yeah.
trying to figure that out. I mean, now looking back, those children were they had much more resources than we did. I was in an inner city school. We were lucky that we got textbooks that we didn't have to share. So first year was rough. Sophomore year, I kind of, I need to work harder. I need to figure out, how to catch up. What do I need to do extra to kind of feel that I'm within the same league?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in today. I want to share with you that this episode is brought to you by the law office of Kenny S. Ramirez. Now, life can change in an instant. Whether it's a car accident that wasn't your fault, a slip and fall in a grocery store, or even the tragic loss of a loved one. And the aftermath can feel overwhelming. You might be dealing with trying to get medical treatment, medical bills, missing work, calls from the insurance company, or just the stress of not knowing what to do next. That's where we come in. At the Law Office of Kenny S. Ramirez, you have a team, a family of accident attorneys who are here to give you back your time and peace of mind. We're here to help you get the maximum compensation you deserve so you can focus on healing and getting back to what matters most to you: your life, your family, your future. If you or someone you know needs some guidance and support after an accident, click the link in the description below for a free case evaluation. You'll speak with our team and we'll help you get your life back on track. And we're committed to being by your side every single step of the way. No matter life's challenges, you don't have to face it alone. We're here for you. Now let's get back into the episode.
Can I ask you, and I want to know kind of what were the things that you did to try to put yourself on the same level and begin to succeed as well as your peers now that you're in high school? But before that, maybe looking back to, I love the story about your mom pulling you from school and like making you go to work and kind of scaring you straight. My dad did the same thing to me really briefly when I was in 7th grade. Like I was misbehaving really, really bad that year. Still getting good grades, but just really misbehaving at school. And he took me to work with him like the whole summer doing framing. That scared me straight because I was like, I don't want to do the rest of my life. But how did sort of that background and seeing your parents, working 2 jobs to make ends meet, to save up money to be able to get a house for you guys, right? And how did that experience watching them even, because a lot of people could go, let's say one individual could go to high school, experience everything that you experienced there and go, oh, like kind of bow out, right? And give up a little bit because like I'm never going to be able to catch up. Like I can't do this, and maybe succumb to that sort of feeling. Whereas it's clear as I'm watching you, hearing you tell this story, I can almost like see the fire again, right? Kind of going like, okay, this is strange, but like, what can I do now to like win, right? To move forward. Like I can't stay here. I'm not going to give up. And so how did that sort of background, and you're watching your parents and you think sort of instill that in you even?
I think it's a very common background among, first generation is you do what needs to be done and you don't overthink it. I mean, my parents, they needed to work 7 days a week in order to put food on the table. They didn't sit there and ponder the meaning of life. They were like, this is what needs to get done. This is what I'm going to do. Yeah. And so a lot of that really did help the fact that we were able to do these long hours. We were able to, it's fortitude really that they kind of instilled in us. That when I got to freshman year, this is what needs to get done. I need to study more. I need to do more. I worked all the time. I've always worked as far as I can remember, from the time that we were 7 and my mom would take us to her work until now. I've never been unemployed, ever. You know, I've always had something going on. So I think that sort of fortitude that they instilled in us really did kind of prepare us for success. I don't think we always think about it that way.
Yeah.
You know, some people are resentful. Some people don't appreciate it. They don't know how to, like you said, turn it into something positive. I was lucky that, you know, at the time I thought my mom was harsh. She wasn't like lovey-dovey, but it was like, get up, do it. Like there's no excuses not to do it. And so a lot of that in my life that's happened is just, it needs to be done. I'm going to do it. You know, that's it.
Yeah. Can you, and this might be a bit of a unfair or challenging question, so I apologize ahead of time, okay? But, you know, as maybe young people now, like in school or college or kind of things that are happening in life, and, you know, you mentioned don't overthink it, right? Maybe we may not have, or somebody may not be experiencing, maybe they had, you know, you as a mother, right? And maybe grew up in a different circumstance, right? And a little bit better than, you know, how we may have experienced life growing up initially, right? But then it's like, you know, how do you encourage and go, hey, there's something that needs to be done, and perhaps not overthinking things that shouldn't be overthought, kind of.
You know, I struggle with this because I have children.
Yeah.
And my children are in their teens.
Yeah.
And I try to balance my mom's tact, her the way that she raised us, with the more sort of common parental notions now, where they're like, well, you know, you can't talk to them a certain way, or you have to. I think a lot of it is experience. You know, I worry that my kids are not going to be as resilient as my husband and I are. They didn't, the challenges that we were dealt with really did build a lot of character that I know when I'm 80, I'm still going to have these life lessons that are going to get me through anything. I think that you really have to sort of, faced with any problem, you have to focus on putting one foot in front of the other. What needs to get done right now? What I've noticed a lot, especially with teenagers, is they get so overwhelmed because you're looking at the big picture and there's 100 problems.
Sure.
But what can I fix right now? And, you know, I worry about that. That's actually a conversation that my husband and I have constantly because we have 4 children. And it's like, are they going to be okay? We don't want to spoil them, but we also don't want to do what our parents did to a certain extent.
Yeah, and you went through things in life so that they wouldn't have to experience certain things in life, right? And that's also a reward of sorts for you as well, for all the work that you went through, right? Not having to have your children go through those same experiences as well. It's a question that I ponder. I don't have children, but I think about that stuff in the future. It's like, how do you, instill that resilience as well? You mentioned experience. It's almost like, and I hear you talk, and you say the experiences that we went through. It's almost like the experiences can also be like another word could be substituted in for it as like sometimes challenges or even failures, right? Because those are the experiences that we learn from. So it's like, welcome or jump at, take risks, welcome those challenges and experiencing failure to some degree, because that is what makes you resilient. Yeah,
I mean, I think people who look at a failure, it is a negative thing, but it also means you tried something different. And if you don't risk, you don't get a reward. So sometimes you're going to fail. That just comes with trying, and that's okay. I think the real art comes with being able to pick yourself up after failure, because I think the problem, and I've had that too, where you fail and then you fail again, and then you can't seem to pick yourself up and pick yourself out of it. And that's one of the things I do tell my kids. It's like, it's okay to fall, but you got to get back up, because I think that's a real talent. And really just failure can build on you, and it can really just like mentally drain you and mentally just challenge you. And then you start questioning yourself. Am I this smart? You know, do I belong here? Am I really meant to do this? And so I think the real key is, yes, I am. I am meant to do this. I am this smart. And just recognizing that just because you failed at this one thing doesn't make you a failure. It just, you got to try something else.
Yeah. I love what you said. And I'm going to take that, by the way. I'm going to repeat it. The real art is being able to pick yourself up again.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Because I mean, if you think about it in freshman year, like you said, and that was just the beginning, like that was just the first real instance where life kind of hit me in the face. And I was like, wait a minute, what am I? Who am I? Like, this is weird. And so that's just the first instance. I think we all experience that when we go into corporate America, when we grew up a certain way and we're like, wait, but nobody listens to me here. Or, people don't respect what I have to say. I mean, I'm a woman and I'm Hispanic. So like, there's a lot of things that are going on there. So I think that you kind of just have to shake it off and really try to face whatever the reality is and then try to figure out a way around it or through it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. And so you are freshman year heading into sophomore year now, and sort of throughout the rest of high school, how do you then pick yourself up and move forward? And I know that, you went to UCLA, and then how does that transition then happen as well? Because once again, from my end, I was the first one to go to college in my family, right? I imagine it's very similar to your experience. And so how is that even a goal? And then how do you ultimately decide, hey, I want to go to law school?
So I known since I was a kid that I was going to go to law school.
Cool.
And the reason why I was going to be an attorney is it started off, I don't think it was a compliment, but when I was a kid, my generation, I'm older, much older than you guys. We were to be seen and not heard. Kids were not. If we came into a room, we were quiet and we were on the side. And I always had a lot of questions.
We might be the same age.
No, I don't think so. We
same experience.
But we had a lot of questions.
In a good way. No.
And people kept saying like, ugh, too many questions, in Spanish. You argue too much, you talk too much, you should be a lawyer. And so I don't think it was a compliment. And I didn't know any lawyers, right? So what do I know? But I thought like, that sounds like something I want to be.
Sure.
And as I got older, my mom used to work for an attorney. And he would get up in the morning, wear his suits and go away. So cool. And I thought, this is, I can do that. That seems kind of cool. And so I always knew I was going to be a lawyer. I didn't know what that was, had no idea. But the trajectory just kind of went that way. In my head, I knew I was going to be a lawyer. When I went to high school, there was all these people that were going to do all these wonderful things. They had big plans. They were going to take over their father's company. They were going to, do all these things. I struggled the first year, but I recouped. By sophomore, junior year, I was taking AP classes. I was taking honors classes. I was an okay student. I wasn't a straight A student. I worked full time during high school. Oh, wow. I worked as a waitress, and
I didn't know that.
I would take the bus. The school bus would drop me off next to the restaurant. I would work at the restaurant from 5 to 11 when they closed, and then I would go home and do my homework.
Goodness, Erika.
So I didn't really have a lot of time to kind of ponder things, but I never doubted where I was going. I knew I was going to go to college. I knew I was going to be an attorney. What it took, what the colleges were looking for, I didn't really think about it. When I graduated, I went to community college. I transferred to community college. I did my time at a community college, and then I transferred to UCLA. So it was not a direct transition, but I got there. I think, it's important to realize that everybody's path is a little different.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't know that you were working when you were in high school.
Yeah.
So, and so when did you start working? Was it like sophomore year, junior, or?
I started working when I was a sophomore.
Sophomore. Goodness. Yeah. You think about the time that it took just to study and all this stuff, and you were cramming that in before sleep, basically. Wow. Okay. So, you go to community college, you go to UCLA, you want to be a lawyer, and you have no idea what that is yet, right? You just know you want to be a lawyer. When did you sort of start learning about maybe the type of law that you wanted to do? Was it until law school that you were exposed to that?
No. So, a lot of my journey has really been like a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
That have led to opportunities, that have led to like luck.
Yeah.
when I graduated college, I didn't have a real job, and I needed to leave my waitressing job because I had a BA already. So I got a temp agency job where they would send me. The first job that they send me to is a firm needs a receptionist, a law firm needs a receptionist. Cool. I'd never really done any of that stuff before, but I'd never done real office work. So they send me to this firm called Cussman and Whitehill. I didn't know, because I've never worked at a firm before. So premier firm, AV rated. One of the partners is an MD-JD, and the other partner does personal injury. The MD-JD does plaintiff's med-mal. Yeah. And so I start off, my first job is with these wonderful people. And I worked there for a week. And then they're like, well, we want to keep you. I worked there for 6 months. They said, you know what, I think you can be a paralegal. Russ Cussman gave me this book. It was a discovery handbook. And he was like, here, read it. I think you can get this whole discovery thing. Yeah. And I did. I read the whole book. It was not it's not meant to be read from beginning to end, but I read it and I started doing discovery. Wow. And so I'm working in this great firm. Yeah. I'm seeing all these wonderful cases that they're working on, these people that they're helping. And I thought like, wow, this is something I could really get into. I really like that they're helping people. And I love the back and forth about litigation. The what are we going to do next? Well, what are they going to do? And sort of like the chessboard, right? I really like that. And so while I was working at Cussman and Whitehill, I applied to go to law school. I went to law school while I was still working full-time as a paralegal there. I did the 4-year program at Loyola, which is the evening program. And I was lucky. That was a stroke of luck. How else would I end up at a premier firm as my first legal job? One of the great things about working at that firm was that I worked for guys who were really good at what they did, and they explained it to me. And it wasn't like, there was no judgment in it. It was just like, I want you to learn to love the law. Yeah. And I did. I did learn to love the law. That's something that's, I've been really, really lucky to work with great people. Yeah.
That's amazing. And I know that oftentimes people call it luck, and we look at it and we feel very fortunate. I also think to a large degree a lot of that is you also turning that into something, right? Because hey, it was fortunate that you were placed there, but you could have also mailed it in, and that could have not been anything, right? It should have just been another stop in the journey. But the fact that you kind of gave it your all and learned, right, and absorbed everything that they were teaching you. And also, can you talk about when young people begin work at any place, how they can best position themselves to continue learning? Because I think a component of it, obviously I wasn't there, but as you're talking and as we get to know each other a little bit more, I feel like a component of who you are and how I imagine you conducted yourself then also was that you were willing to learn, and you were receptive to the information that was provided. And so, my dad actually said this recently to me. I loved it, right? And it's not anything new, but it really hit me in the moment. It's like, the teacher appears when the student's ready.
Right. That's true.
And so it's like, in the moment, you were ready for it, right? And these people saw in you as well, like someone receptive. So like, let's pour into her.
Yeah. No, and I think that's true. I think, one, you have to look at the job as a learning experience for you. It's not really that you're doing something for your boss. I mean, you are. But how am I going to learn from this? How am I going to be better from this experience? And I think that's really important. I think it's also important to come prepared and not think of your job as this menial kind of task you have to do. That whole thing about, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. That is very true. Find something that you're going to feel happy about learning about. You're going to feel happy about doing it every day, getting better at it every day. I think that was really important for me. I enjoyed it. I really enjoy learning about it. I dressed the part. I dressed as if I was an attorney because I wanted to be an attorney so bad. I wanted to mix with them. And I would show up early. I would leave late. I think that's super important. Now with COVID, I tell people, no one's coming to your house to give you opportunities. No one's coming to your house to say, hey, there's this great, case I'm working on. I need these tasks. some of the best opportunities I've gotten is because I happen to be in the kitchen, getting some coffee at like 6 p.m. and someone's like, you know what? I have this great case. I need someone to do this. And I'm like, yeah, I'm there. I'll do it. And so I think that's also being open to these opportunities, being open to doing things that need to get done, to further your career, to further your knowledge and your experience is also important. Because I think if you look at it as a job, and I would love to help you, but it's past 4:30 and I gotta go.
Yeah.
That person's not gonna ask you again. You've lost that opportunity.
Yeah. Talking about looking at it as a job versus like a passion or something that
Right.
it's kind of purpose driven, right? Completely changes the way that you interact.
Right.
How about, I think you knew that you wanted to be an attorney, so you were kind of consuming that experience there, right? Did you ever run into any kind of situations in law school even? I mean, you're working, again, as we've learned here, you literally were working from when you were a child through the entire period, right? Was there ever any moment where you kind of thought, I don't know if I can do this or if I'm cut out for this, or I don't know, any moment of doubt or challenge or situation that may have happened that might have thrown a little wrench in there?
Not so much in law school. I had that later on in my career.
Okay.
In law school, I was tired. I remember my first year, there was a lot of crying on my part. And just because I was so exhausted.
Yeah.
I worked from 9 to 5. At 5, I left the office. I drove to Loyola. It took me about 45 minutes to an hour. Classes started at 6 and they went till 10.
Oh.
And then on the weekends, you needed to catch up on your reading because you weren't reading during the week. And so it was constant. Once I got used to that on the first year, it got better. I didn't feel as exhausted. I felt like I was starting to kind of really understand. It helped me because I worked at a firm. A lot of the cases, a lot of stuff that they talked about, I had a background for it.
Yeah.
And a lot of the people in the evening program were second career people. So they all had work or they all were doing something. So I didn't feel so alone doing the hard stuff.
Right.
And so that really did help me.
Yeah. Do you have any advice, or what advice would you give to somebody going through a similar situation to, like you did right now in law school where they're working, right? And there's almost no time to do the studying, and they're feeling tired, they're feeling sort of drained, there is crying, there's all of that because hey, those are emotions, and you kind of, when you feel like everything is sort of pressure surrounding you, you get emotional.
Right.
What is the advice that you'd give to a student in that position, having gone through what you went through already?
It's going to get better. I think when it's happening to you, you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And so it is going to get better, and really just keep that faith and belief that you have in yourself that got you this far to kind of push you through. The first year is going to be the worst. The second year is going to get better. The third year is going to get better. Bar study sucks, but you're going to get through it.
Challenge, you'll do it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all sort of kind of keeping that faith in yourself. I do think that as many of the challenges that we had growing up, one of the things that really sort of I inherited from my parents that to this day I think will benefit me and will benefit me to the day I die is that I'm a really hard worker. I can outwork anybody. I don't have a problem. Maybe I'm not as smart as you. I didn't go to Harvard, but I can outwork you.
Right.
And so sometimes you just kind of have to figure out what works for you. What is your superpower?
There you go.
And once you figure that out, it really does kind of give you purpose. And it kind of reassures that faith that you have in yourself.
I like how you just said this right now as well, because we can feel maybe insecure, right? Because someone else went to Harvard or has this amazing sort of like lineage and
Right.
background. And like, they're also very smart, high IQ, and you can just tell, wow, they're smarter than I am, right? But there is a power in understanding what you bring to the table, because then somebody being smarter than me doesn't make me less than them, right? And you can appreciate people for who they are, but still be confident in who you are and what you bring to the table, right?
And honestly, I do think that once I realized that, it changed my life. Once I realized what do I have, I don't want to look at so-and-so and find out what they have, because I don't have that. I'm not so-and-so. But once you kind of look at yourself, what are my gifts? What are my strengths? How can I help those? Yes, that person is super smart because they went to so-and-so, but you know what? They don't know how to tie their shoes. I can tie my shoes. So it's little things like that are very, I have a lot of street smarts.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who are super book smart, have no street smarts. And there's things that when you look at a case or you look at a file and they don't see, you're like, okay, well, you didn't see that and I'm not going to point it out to you. And so, once you kind of figure that out about yourself, and it takes time, it takes experience, it takes failure, it takes, kind of pulling yourself back up to kind of figure out what are my strengths. Try to figure out who you are too, because I think, especially when we're new to a career, we're looking at people who are really great at what they do. And you're like, okay, well, he does this, so I'm going to try to do this. And it doesn't work. It doesn't always work for you. So once you figure that out, I think it does really kind of help you strengthen not just your character, but it strengthens your confidence in yourself and then helps you sort of advance in your career.
I love that. And so I want to follow up on that. Maybe we can do it in the context of you moving into Panish Shea, formerly Panish Shea Boyle at that time. And can you talk to us about how that transition was made? And for our listeners and young people who may not know, I mean, Erika made this transition into a firm that everybody in the legal industry knows. They do the highest of profile catastrophic injury, wrongful death cases. I mean, if you're in law school and you're looking at places that you want to be here, right? You want to work here. You want to have those cases at that firm. And you made that transition into that firm that only a select few people get chosen for that opportunity, right? And not just chosen, but earn that opportunity. And so can you talk to us about kind of how that happened and then finding your way in this sort of like big behemoth of a like firm, right?
Yeah. So when I started at the firm, I was lawyer number 12. So everybody was so excited. I was a 12th attorney. We're now Panish Shea Ravipudi. We're at 45. And so to kind of grow with that. But I was a fan of the firm even before I started there. At Cussman and Whitehill, I worked with Michael Whitehill, and he did the tire cases, the Cooper Tire, Bridgestone tire cases. If you remember, 20 years ago, the tires were detreading, and it was a constant claim. People were dying.
Yeah.
And Panish Shea Boyle at the time, they were also doing those cases. And I would look at the verdict searches or the verdict for the cases, and the firm was coming up. The firm started actually in 2005, so it's not a very old firm, but the reputation grew. And so in 2010, Russell Cussman was appointed to the bench in December. And we had 2 weeks to wind down the firm.
And for our young listeners, appointed to the bench, meaning they became a judge.
Yes,
right?
he became a judge. Once you're a judge, you cannot be an attorney. You cannot have interest in a firm. So we had to shut down the firm in 2 weeks. And I found myself very unemployed for the first time in a long time. And it was sort of like, where do I go? A lot of our files went to other big firms. And so I reached out to those firms. And those firms were very complimentary on the files. I was an associate then. I was a young associate. I think I was only out a year or two. They were like, the work on this file is great. And I said, is it? Can I have a job? Crickets. No response. And a lot of these things, people I knew, I would reach out and say, hey, my firm is closing down. I need, are you hiring? And by this time, I already have a daughter, or I have two. I have 2 kids. And so I had my first daughter my last semester of law school. And so I now have 2 kids. I need to work.
Oh, you were working and you were pregnant and you had a child in law school. Goodness, Erika, there's nothing you can't do.
The path I chose was not the easiest.
That's so impressive. Like, makes the story so much better even. I mean, wow, that's amazing. So now you have two children. You've, through no fault of your own, you're unemployed,
Yes.
right? And I also love that, you're picking up the phone, you're calling, you're looking for a job. You're not, just kind of waiting around, right? No, it's like, hey, I have people depending on me. I need to do stuff. So you're out there making it happen as well. Even being denied, being told no or no response, but you're still
Right.
making it happen. Okay.
Right. So I'm reaching out to everybody I know and I'm trying to find a job. I send an email to Adam Shea because now, you maxed out the circle of people you know.
Yeah.
So now you're going to the people you know who know other people. And then now you're like the people I don't know. You don't know me, but I'm going to send you an email and hopefully, so I did that with Adam Shea. I sent him an email and he never met me. Doesn't know who I am. Yeah. I sent him an email back then. It was like from an AOL account. And I was like, Mr. Shea, I know your firm from the verdicts and settlements. I too have handled. It was one of those just, stock emails.
Yeah.
If your firm is hiring or if you know of someone who's hiring, please let me know. 2 weeks later, I get a response from Adam. Someone from my firm is going to reach out to you and set up an interview. To this day, I still, I'm very grateful to Adam for responding. He could have easily ignored my email. And I didn't know at the time, but they had reached out to Russ Kussman, who they'd known. And Russ Kussman gave me a wonderful recommendation. One of the best recommendations they've read, they said. And so I started there. It was a long interview process. In the meantime, I was doing contract work. I was doing everything I could, to support our family. Yeah. And I started working there in August of 2011 as lawyer number 12. And it was very exciting, but it was also very intimidating because these people, are legends. They have these historic verdicts. They have these big personalities. And it took me a little bit to transition from that sort of awe and fandom to like, okay, we're working together.
Yeah. Let's get to work. Yeah. And as you said, it started in 2005 and with the firm, even at that point, maybe seeming young, the attorneys who were a part of that had an established reputation beyond, right? And so it's like very well known, everybody knew, and again, handling the highest profile of cases. And so how did you make a way for yourself there, right? We have, listeners as well who are young associates and attorneys in firms and, wanting to create a career and their own place in that firm and to grow as well, right? You don't not just, go in every day and like do work and then like leave, but want to grow within the firm as well. Like how did you make a way?
I think for me, it was just being open to the opportunities. That was paramount. You're starting a trial. Do you need help with your trial? Can I defend this deposition? Can I take this deposition for you? It was a lot of that. It was also a lot of, we're always learning. It's a practice of law because the law changes, tactics change. Everybody does different things differently. And so you always want to be talking to people. If you had the situation, what would you do? Or what do you think of this? And constantly doing that. It was difficult because you have to get over the intimidation factor. You have to get over the factor of, I don't belong here. I don't know as much as this person knows. Yeah. I think a lot of people miss opportunities because they don't want to seem stupid. And so they just disappear into the background. Don't talk to me, don't see me. Yeah. I'll do the work, but don't talk to me, don't see me. And a lot of the times your wish is granted, they don't see you. Yeah. And that's not good for you. That's not good for your career.
That's a great point. So how do you toe that? I don't know if the phrase is toe that line, but then how do you successfully ask a question where you're right? I think a lot of times young attorneys don't want to seem like they don't know, right? Or they're not prepared, but you don't know because you don't know. You haven't had the experience, right? So how do you ask? How do you approach? I mean, how did you do it as well? Or is it just, hey, you just got to ask?
Slowly. I did it slowly. It was very much out of my comfort level, even though when I was growing up, I felt like I was fearless. You start going into unknown territory and that fear starts creeping in, and it really does tend to kind of subdue your fearlessness. So very slowly, it took me a really long time. I was so grateful for the work and the opportunity that I was okay with just like being in the background working. And I was happy for the experience, and who wouldn't be? And that's okay. I did a lot of work. I learned a lot. And I think I got to a point where I was like, wait a minute, what am I doing? Am I gonna be happy in the background forever? Or am I going to want to start speaking up? And so a little bit at a time, I started, speaking up, really sort of talking about our successes. I think sometimes people are very uncomfortable talking about their successes, talking about their challenges that they've overcome, their wins, anything that really has to do with them. People just don't want to be the center of attention. And so I just started taking up space. And it was difficult. It was very uncomfortable at the very beginning because I think when it doesn't come natural to you, it takes a little bit of practice. And it did work for me. Slowly but surely, I started saying, I'll take that on. I'll do that. Yeah. I won on this motion. This is my argument. If someone sent an all attorney email, I would respond. It was these little things that kind of really helped me start coming out of my shell. Yeah. I started networking, building relationships. Nowadays, I think it's known that relationships and networking is very important. In our industry, your relationships are value. And everything comes to relationships, cases, jobs, opportunities. And I didn't really know that early on. I mean, early on, I was so busy with everything else. I had kids. I was, passing the bar. I was working my cases. I didn't really work on building those relationships. So I started later. Yeah. And I had a lot of making up to do. But I did it. I started making relationships. I started speaking at seminars. I used to hate it. Yeah. If they said, who wants to speak at a seminar? I hoped that they wouldn't look my way. Now I speak at them all the time. Yeah. And so things like that, we wanted to open an office in Vegas. And this was some time ago. Brian said, I want to open an office in Vegas. Who's going to take the bar? I didn't tell him I was going to take the bar, but I did take the bar. I was the only one in the firm. I was the first one in the firm to get barred in Nevada. That's cool. In 2012. I had 2 kids at the time. I worked full time. We were doing trials all the time. Realistically, it was probably not a good choice. But I passed the bar. I was the first one to pass the bar. We opened up an office in Vegas, a few years later. And so it was those opportunities. The firm was so happy when I passed the bar. We celebrated. It was amazing. But it was really all of those things that made you appear on someone's radar that does help further your career. It does help bring more opportunities to you. And I think when you don't do it, it's really a detriment to you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. Cause I think that's almost like clip that as a sort of blueprint, right? Hey, success at a firm. And even as you were saying, right, even when you first came in and just doing the work, right? Because sometimes we also may want something a little too quickly, right? Where you provided the meat and substance, right? And created everybody knew you to be who you were, hardworking and the quality of work. And then it was like, okay, now it's time to start speaking up as well. Right. And so that when you speak up, it's like, oh no, but she's done all this stuff and that makes sense, right?
Yeah. And I think you also have to be at the right time in your life. I was in between children, so I had time to be doing these things. And so that's what I did. Sometimes you're not mentally prepared. I don't think I could have done that early on. I just don't think I was in that kind of headspace. I didn't really know how the business worked. Right. That's something I learned later. I think it's so important to ask if you don't know, especially in any job, in any corporate job, really in any sort of career. You want to know what the back of the house how it works. Yeah. Because as first generations, we don't know what we don't know when it comes to the business aspect of anything. It's not like we can go to our parents and say, well, how did you do it? Or, what do you know? Who do you know? Right. Who can I ask? And so it's always important to be asking those questions. How does this work? And if I do this, then what happens on this end? And if that doesn't happen, how does that affect me? And how can I help grow the business? Also, because if you don't know how the business works, how are you growing the business? It's hard. And so it's really important to be asking all those questions. And again, you have to be in that right time in your life when you can be asking those questions. And so that's important too. Yeah,
I think that's really cool, Erika, because you also think about it. I like what you just said, because how do I grow the business, right? As well, because you're a part of it as well. And we can become it can become such a microcosm and singular, and you're just kind of going, hey, like my case, and I'm just working on this, and like maybe I want to get a pay increase, or how do I, but then if you look at it as a whole, kind of how do I make the business grow, that's going to trickle down for everybody, including yourself.
Well, and I think that's the difference between looking at it as a job and looking at it as a career. If it's just a 9 to 5, then I don't care. But if you're looking at it as how is this going to further my career, then you care. You care about the business. You care how the business is doing. You care how everybody's doing. You want to make sure everything gets done right. And so that's important too.
Yeah.
And people notice. Once you start talking about people start noticing.
Yeah.
And I think that's important too, because now you see yourself, you're invested, and you connect yourself with the business and with the success, so that their success is your success and your success is their success. And it does really kind of help the dynamic.
Yeah. And speaking of partner at
Yes.
Panish, Shea, Ravipudi, can you tell us about that? And I mean, it was a first as well. And, you can share with us. I mean, that's amazing. Partner at Panish, Shea, Ravipudi at this amazing firm. And I know when that was announced, kind of everybody was just like with congratulations throughout sort of our industry. And everybody was like, this is amazing. It's so cool.
Yeah, I was really happy about that. I think in my career, that is the highest level of achievement. I never would have dreamed it. Never ever. As a 5-year-old who people said talked way too much, I never would have imagined that.
Or you told us about cleaning houses and doing all of that, right?
Yeah.
And now partner.
Yeah, and I think that's the wonderful thing about this country is anything is really possible. It is. Where you grew up does not sort of dictate where you will end up. And so that's really important. I think nowadays there's more information out there. When we were young, there wasn't that much information. People weren't coming to schools and saying, you could be a lawyer. Now I do participate. I do a lot of career days.
Yeah.
I do a lot of bar associations. I'm part of the Latina Lawyers Bar Association. I speak, even though I'm not part of the bar association but in Orange County, they have these great opportunities to go to high schools in Santa Ana and kind of talk to them. All of those things are so important because students really need to understand their potential, and that their potential is limitless, really. So that's really the key to furthering kind of this society, is everybody understanding, hey, your future is really in your own hands.
Yeah. I love that you do that, and I know that you do that a lot, that you go and you speak and encourage young people. Because sometimes it's just like that one person that you hear when you're a kid that, in your case, you mentioned you saw the attorney that would get dressed, put on the suit, and you go, wow, like that looks amazing. I want to do that. And for somebody to just come in and speak, and in your position, right? I think about all the young ladies, the girls that can see you as well, and young boys as well. Anybody who sees you and is just like, wow, like that's amazing. And she looks like me.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's the key, is they look like me. I think it's different when somebody else, because sometimes you don't always make that connection, but she sounds like me. I have a little bit of an accent still, like you can hear it. That's fine. I can, break into Spanish at any moment.
Yeah.
And so that really helps people to really identify with the possibilities.
Yeah. Speaking of being bilingual, right? How has that helped you in your career?
Oh, I think that's been such a game changer for me. Yeah. My mom would not listen to us if we spoke to her in English, and I resented it. I didn't like it because when we were in school, we would get punished if we spoke Spanish. So in elementary school, if the teachers caught us speaking Spanish, I remember distinctly they would put us against the wall, facing the wall for 5 minutes. Because we were not supposed to speak Spanish.
I heard about those stories. Yeah. It didn't happen to me, but I heard about people.
And wow, I mean, it was horrible. Downtown LA, so we had a very high concentration of Hispanics. So it happened a lot because our first language was Spanish. And so they kind of wanted to wean us off of it. But my mom, when we were home, she would say in Spanish, ¿quieres comer? And if you responded to her in English, she would say, no te entiendo. And so that was
one word.
That was it. Oh, what do you want to eat? And if you responded in Spanish, she would say, I don't know what that is. And so she really forced us to speak Spanish. Such a game changer in your career. I think people don't realize how important it is, especially in our industry in personal injury. 90% of our clients are Spanish speaking. There's a lot of things that don't translate into English, especially when you're talking about non-economic damages. There's a lot of cultural things that don't really translate well. Something gets lost sometimes between speaking to the translator and then to the attorney. There's like, it's hard to connect. So it's really important that you're able to communicate directly with your clients. I think also in any industry, in any business, the market is Spanish speaking in any business. And so to be able to communicate with the Spanish speaking market is key. It's so important. Whether you're a doctor or a marketer or whatever it is, that really does give you an edge.
Yeah.
Especially in Southern California.
Yeah. And then, on cases that, for example, even on media, right? Then you're the one that's speaking on Spanish TV. So even that is another opportunity as well to be able to go and represent the firm.
Yeah, no, and I think, in our cases, a lot of it is non-economic damages. And if you don't understand someone culturally, it's really hard for them to explain what's going on. And it's hard for you to explain that to the jury. So to be able to translate that, the fact that he can't go to work has really affected his self-esteem. It really has affected the way he sees himself, the way he functions in life, depression, anxiety, all of those things, to be able to translate that into a jury. So a jury that may not be Hispanic understands what that means for a man not to be able to provide for his family culturally, or for a mom not to be able to care for her children, or for adult children who maybe have lost a parent, how that's still so significant because we spend so much time with our family. Even though we're adults in our culture, we still see each other every weekend. To not be able to pick up the phone and call. I call my mom all the time. And so to be able to translate that all to a jury that may not necessarily understand that lifestyle, but still be able to appreciate your loss, that's really important.
I always thank my parents as well. It's very similar for us, right? Just how much Spanish. And as we grow older, especially now, like I've been very purposeful over the last several years of speaking more Spanish, or like in my daily life, to improve, sort of expand my vocabulary there, because a lot of times you want to be able to express yourself the correct way to your clients so that they understand as well. So definitely for young people, encouraging them to, hey, it's okay, speak Spanish, right? Keep practicing because it's going to help.
I haven't been great with my kids. My kids all understand it. I've started to, I have a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 7-year-old. So with the 14 and the 16, we started watching novelas. And so it kind of helps them work on their accent and helps them with the sayings, because our Spanish sayings are so awesome. I love saying them. I always, at the office, I'm like, in Spanish, we have a saying. And I try to explain it to them. It doesn't sound the same,
it doesn't.
But it does help them kind of pick that up so that hopefully, when they're older, they'll be more fluent.
I heard one thing, and it certainly is helpful. It's like if you have a favorite TV show or whatever that, you've seen, however many times you've seen it, just like put it in Spanish, because you know everything they're saying in English, but now just hear it in Spanish, and like it helps you sort of like learn. Yeah,
we put the novelas, they're in Spanish, but the subtitles are in English. So they can kind of, because if there's something they don't understand, and now you can pause it, and it's also more interesting because novelas are always, just more interesting in general.
A lot emotionally charged, so you'll learn a lot about emotional.
Right. My daughter, she's just like, and sometimes you have to jump in. It's like, that's not appropriate. We don't mention to talk to women like that. But in general, it's a good way of sort of facilitating the accent.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I wanted to, speaking of your children now, one of the, as I told you right before we started as well, this is certainly not the thing that defines you. We've, learned so much about you and your career and everything that you've done. But I think one amazing thing, one thing that I admire as well, in addition to everything about you, is that you're a working mother that is raising your children and has achieved the highest of highs in your career. So like, when you think about, having it all, like you're doing it, right? You're an example of that. And I just think that's so cool for for everybody and anybody who aspires to have a family and be able to, not maybe they think, I won't be able to do X in my career if I have children, right? Or you have 4 children and everything that you've done. So can you talk to us a little bit about your family, your children, and then also how maybe perhaps that experience, and I've heard you say this in the past, has, even as a mother, has helped you in your career?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is this belief, especially a long time ago, that you couldn't do everything, that you couldn't have it all. It wasn't really realistic. I'd always wanted to have a big family. I come from, we're 4. I wanted to have 4. My father tried to talk me out of it when he was alive. He was just like, no, mija, just have 2. And I was like, but Dad, you have 4. And he was like, that's why I'm telling you, just have 2. So I always just knew. I married my childhood sweetheart. And so when we got married, we started having children pretty much right away. I was in my last year of law school when our first daughter came. She was born January 8th. And I graduated in May, and I took the bar in July. I was still nursing her. My husband had to take the whole week off of work to come to the, I took the test in Ontario.
Oh, yeah.
And so he brought her to Ontario.
Welcome back. No,
Thank you. He brought her to Ontario, and they would stay at the hotel and then just come so I can feed her in breaks. And it also kind of helped me emotionally. I had postpartum after her. And so it just kind of helped me to be near her, kind of made everything normal so that you could focus on the test. So that really did kind of help me. But it's been a challenge. I'm not going to lie to you and say it's all been easy.
Yeah.
I think now we have a better understanding of parenting. I think before you weren't allowed to talk about the challenges. People didn't really talk about it. Now it's like, it's stressful as heck, It is very stressful. When I got pregnant with my first daughter, everybody said, it's a magical experience. Babies are, it's going to be amazing. And it's going to be so wonderful. It's so fulfilling. Yes. But nobody said, like, you're not going to ever sleep again.
Yeah.
It was very stressful.
Yeah.
I had a lot of complications. And so nobody ever talked about it. Nobody ever said, you're going to feel like a failure. You're going to worry about everything. You're going to worry that you're not doing a good job, that you're not giving them enough attention. Then you're going to worry that you're giving them too much attention. And, people didn't really talk about it then. Yeah. But in a way, too, that was this ignorant bliss of, why not? Why can't I have 4? And so my first daughter was amazing, easy. I think that's nature's way of kind of tricking you into having more children. She was super easy. And so we had another one 2 years later. And so I had 2 children when I was at Cuthman and Whitehill. And I had 2 boys when I was at Panish, Shea, Ravipudi now. And so
2 and 2.
2 and 2. Yes. That, like I said, sometimes it's just luck. It just, the
awesome.
universe comes together.
Yeah.
to get whatever you get. But it's been, for people who are not attorneys or that don't do litigation is fast paced. It is very time consuming. I mean, you guys know, you may go into these little lulls where it's normal, and then it just speeds up and you won't sleep for 4 weeks. And that's been challenging. My husband is amazing. He's super supportive. If I'm gone, I mean, we had a trial in El Centro where I was gone for 3 weeks, and I would just come home Thursday and leave Sunday again. And he didn't say anything. He did what he did. And yes, they're his. He's supposed to. But I think a lot of partners would not be so encouraging and just kind of let me do my thing. Right. He works too, so he dealt with the kids while I was gone, and it was never an issue. I didn't have to deal with that, so it did really make my burden a little lighter. Yeah. I knew the children were being taken care of. I knew that whatever they needed. If something happened, I needed to come home, he would let me know. Otherwise, no news is good news. Yeah. So that really worked out for us.
Yeah, that's beautiful. High school sweetheart and
children. We were children, yeah. We were children when we met. We were so when I grew up in Pico Union, there was a rec center right across the street from our apartment building. And that was sort of like the community's way of keeping us out of trouble. There was basketball teams and a pool, a soccer team. They had Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. And we met there when I was 11. when we were both 11. And then we learned that we actually went to the same junior high, which was Berendo, and 11 or 12. And that's, we've known each other ever since.
Oh, that's sweet. That's a beautiful story. So, I think again, this idea of like having it all, and you mentioned that it is stressful. It does bring its challenges, and oftentimes, I think about everything that we do brings challenges. It creates stress. Like no matter what you do, like you're gonna experience it. So it's almost to your point. It's like, hey, I wanted to have 4 children. Let's do it, and we're gonna deal with, as you told us from the very beginning, sort of your experience and approach to life as well. It's like, hey, this has to get done. Let's put one foot in front of the other. Let's just get it done, right?
Yeah.
And no matter what we do, there's going to be stress. And I guess part of what I'm hearing as well is that, hey, welcome and accept it for what it is, and, find solutions and keep moving forward. And, we choose whatever stressful situation to some degree we may be in, but there's so much joy, right? And so much sort of reward that comes with it.
Oh yeah, 100%. I think that you have to find the right partner to help you with that,
like
because it is going to be challenging. I'm lucky in that sense. Also, you have to find a job or a firm that's going to understand that you do, and they're not going to hold it against you, right? And so I've had that, and that's also been really, really helpful. And so I think those things on sort of exterior view are very helpful. But it's also important for you to just, if this is what I want, this is what I'm going to make happen. And I was able to do that. I don't want to sugarcoat it and tell people you can do it, go ahead, it's going to be fine. It's hard. Yeah. Parenting and just in general is hard. Yeah. But then you add a very high-paced job, and it does pose its challenges, but you're right, it is so rewarding. I wouldn't change the timing. I wouldn't change anything, really. I think it's all, I've led a very charmed life.
That's beautiful to hear that perspective, and for you to, say that. And as you share with us everything that you've experienced, I think perspective is everything, right? Yeah. Because despite all that experience, one can look at it as good, bad, difficult, whatever, but to hear you say that it's a charmed life, it is, because it's what you say it is.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Being mindful of our time here, I don't want to keep you too long. Can I just ask you one final sort of maybe overarching sort of question here? If you could share with us a little bit about, because I wanted to give you the space to do this, you've handled and been successfully handled so many amazing cases and righteous cases, and helped out so many people and families. And is there perhaps one or two that just kind of stick out to your mind, in your mind, and maybe that you can share with our listeners, people who are hearing you right now and going, "Wow, like she's amazing. I want to be just like her," and share maybe some of the stuff that you do, and maybe it's something that they'd like to do in the future as well.
Yeah, I think I've been very fortunate. I've had these wonderful clients. I think people don't really realize that when you are injured through no fault of your own and you bring a case, the insurance company does not want to pay you. Yeah. And they will make the case about you. And all of a sudden you became the bad guy. And so really being able to defend your client and show how any injury has really affected them individually is super important. When you're an individual, it's hard to manage that, because then you start questioning yourself. You're like, oh, wait, maybe I didn't run that much, and I don't, the fact that I can't run now it's not really that big of a deal. Yeah. And so to be able to do that just in general in these kinds of cases is super important to me. We had a case against the Yucaipa Mesa Unified School District a couple years ago. It was a young girl who went to school. She had logged with the school her medical issues. She had asthma, very bad asthma. And she goes to school, mom drops her off, and she never comes home. She dies at school. Yeah. Goes into cardiac arrest and just dies. The school didn't recognize that she was having an asthma attack. They should have known, because they had all the information that she was someone who was prone to asthma attacks. They didn't react or act in time. They waited until she goes into cardiac arrest before they call 911. And by the time a child goes into cardiac arrest, the chances of surviving are very, very slim. And she dies, and she never comes home. I thought that was such an important case, because you put yourself in that position of a mom. And, it's still kind of like emotionally, your kids are supposed to come home. When you drop them off at school, they're supposed to come home. And so that was super important to me because they made it about mom. They made it about everybody else. It wasn't about how they screwed up. And so that was something that you never want a mom to feel like she did something to cause, the incident, because she didn't. It wasn't her fault. She wasn't even there. And so defending that case and really bringing that case to fruition was super important to me. I had another case down in Imperial County where a gentleman was making a delivery, and he, as he's unloading his truck, gets run over by this big industrial forklift. And it was a workers' comp personal injury crossover. So his workers' comp case had almost resolved. Workers' comp, it's really hard to get treatment. And so they sent him back to work. And so by the time the case came to me, the accident had already been like a year. Okay. He had already gone back to work. He was working 10 to 12 hour days. Jeez. And as I was going through the workers' comp medical records, I kind of looked, and there was a reference to CRPS. But in workers' comp, it didn't get approved, and he never followed up, and he went back to work. The man needed to go to work. And this man, to this day, I can't imagine this man was working 10 to 12 hour days, wearing work boots with CRPS in his foot. And can you imagine the kind of pain he was in? We brought the case against the forklift driver and the company for the forklift driver, and we were able to settle his case for millions of dollars. But one of the things they kept saying was, how hurt can he be? He's working 10 to 12 hour days, he's making so much money. But it was a story. They didn't realize that every couple hours he had to pull over his truck and take off his shoe and just let his foot rest because it was killing him. All the over-the-counter pain medication that he had to take. He went to work because he had to go to work, but he wasn't okay. And it was really important to be able to tell that story. And what I love about that case is that case settled maybe 7 years ago. He still calls me once a year, maybe every 9 months. How are you doing? I just want to say thank you. I really appreciated what you did for my family. And so things like that, those things really show you that you've changed people's lives. And so it helps you get through the hard days. It helps you get through the days where you may not see your family as much as you want to. You may not get as much sleep as you want to, but you feel like, wow, I changed someone's life for the better today. Yeah. So that's the wonderful thing about our industry.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing those stories. That brings home this idea of what you do and everything that you've done. And I love that it's, at the end of the day, it's about helping people and helping change people's lives and improving their lives, right? And being their voice. It's maybe it can be seen as a cliche, but it's true. You're speaking up for them and you're fighting for them and bringing justice where otherwise there wouldn't be, right? Because you're right, insurance company isn't going to pay just out of goodwill. Yeah, no, and a lot of the times, culturally, they don't want to speak up. They're like, it's okay, I'm okay. All the time. Yeah. That's a huge hurdle to get over, right? And even to the general damages component, to get people to open up and tell us what really is happening here and in here. Right. That's the hardest part. It's really getting them to, and understanding how you can kind of get to them, right? I had this case where a gentleman he's only 26, he had his foot amputated because he was in a forklift collision. And during his deposition, very stoic, didn't cry. And I mean, you're 26, you lost a foot. How is this not affecting you emotionally? And at the end of the depo, I just asked the question and said, do you have a son or do you have a child? And he said, yes, I do. And I go, have you changed the way you play with them? Tears. Yeah. I knew that that was something that was very important to him. And it's just really knowing how to tell the story, knowing they don't always know, the clients don't always know what to bring up. So knowing what they need to bring up or how the story is different from everybody else's story. I mean, he just cried like a baby. He was like, I can't run after my son. He's 2. Things like that are so super important. Yeah. And that's why we need, and victims and clients need you on their side to be able to tell their story. Otherwise, nobody would. No, it's a privilege. It's what we do is a privilege. Yeah. All right. Well, Erika, thank you so much for being with us today. I think we learned so much about you and encouraging as well and inspiring. Thank you for making the trek out here to good old San Bernardino. and for sharing your story with us. We're very honored that you did that.
No, thank you for having me. I think the Art of Purpose is an amazing project for people like us who sort of need affirmations when we might be going through something hard or a difficult phase in our lives. We just want to know that other people are doing it, that they did it, that they found themselves on the other side, and it was okay. And so I really appreciate this opportunity. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Erika. And thank you to everybody for tuning in, for listening in, for watching the video, wherever you might be streaming and listening to this episode. This is an inspiring one. And, be ready. We got amazing guests coming, and you're sure to be inspired and encouraged. We'll see you on the next episode of Art of Purpose.